Commander Jake Morrison stood at the command deck of Earth Defense Station Alpha, his eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. The message had arrived 3 hours ago, and he had watched it 17 times already. Each viewing made his jaw clench a little tighter. The alien face on the screen belonged to Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. His reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The scales on his face shimmered with an oily green color that reminded Jake of toxic waste. The Admiral's voice was smooth, almost pleasant, which made his words even more chilling. "Humans of Earth," the message began. "Your planet sits at the junction of 7 hyperspace lanes. This location is strategically important to the Zephyrian Empire. You have 30 standard days to evacuate your world and surrender it to our control. Failure to comply will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. We have destroyed 47 civilizations who refused our generous offers. Do not be the 48th. Jake turned away from the display and looked out at Earth below. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel, peaceful and beautiful. Somewhere down there, his daughter was probably in school, learning about ancient history. She had no idea that her world had just been given a death sentence. Dr. Lisa Parker entered the command center, her tablet clutched against her chest. She was the station's chief xenobiologist, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her red hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "I've analyzed the intelligence data," she said without preamble. "The Zephyrian fleet that's staging near our borders consists of 3,000 Dreadnought-class warships. Each one carries enough firepower to turn an entire continent into glass. They've used these exact formations 47 times before, and not once has any species survived." Jake rubbed his temples. "What about our fleet?" "We have 300 ships," Lisa replied quietly. "Most of them are patrol cruisers and defense frigates. Our newest battleship is 20 years old. On paper, we don't stand a chance." Captain Ben Rogers was already suited up when Jake called him to the briefing room. Ben was humanity's best scout pilot, a thin man with sharp features and sharper instincts. He had survived more dangerous reconnaissance missions than anyone else in the fleet. "I need you to get close to their staging areas," Jake told him. "We need to know exactly what we're facing." Ben nodded. "I'll take the Shadow Runner. She's fast enough to get in and out before they know I'm there." 3 days later, Ben's report arrived, and it was worse than anyone had feared. The scout had captured detailed scans of the Zephyrian fleet. The images showed massive ships bristling with weapons. There were bioweapon deployment systems capable of poisoning entire atmospheres. There were planetary bombardment platforms that had been used to reduce living worlds to barren rocks. The Zephyrians weren't just conquerors. They were exterminators. President Claire Davis called an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. The chamber was packed with military commanders, government officials, and scientific advisors. The mood was grim. Everyone had seen Ben's reconnaissance data. General Henry Brooks spoke first. "Madam President, we need to start evacuation procedures immediately. We can save maybe 10% of the population if we start now. The colony worlds can absorb the refugees over time." "Abandon Earth?" President Davis's voice was sharp. "Just give up our homeworld without a fight?" "It's not giving up," Brooks replied. "It's survival. We can't win this fight." Lisa stood up, her voice trembling slightly. "General Brooks is right about the numbers. But there's something else you all need to know. I've been studying the Zephyrian expansion patterns. They don't stop. Every world they conquer becomes a staging ground for the next invasion. If we run, they'll hunt us down world by world until humanity is extinct." The room fell silent. President Davis looked around at the faces of humanity's leaders. She saw fear, yes, but also determination. These people had built a civilization that stretched across 12 star systems. They had survived wars, plagues, and the harsh reality of space itself. They weren't the type to surrender easily. "We fight," Davis said finally. "Send a message to Admiral Kethvar. Tell him that humanity rejects his ultimatum." Jake was chosen to deliver the response. He stood before the transmission array, knowing that every species in the galaxy would see this message. The Zephyrians made sure their ultimatums were public, a way to break the spirit of their victims before the fighting even started. "To the Zephyrian Empire," Jake began, his voice calm and steady. "Humanity has received your ultimatum and hereby rejects it. Earth is not for sale, and we will not abandon our homeworld. The Zephyrian Empire has 30 days to withdraw all forces from human space. Any attack on Earth or our colonies will result in consequences beyond your comprehension. This is your only warning. The message was short, simple, and according to every military analyst, completely insane. Across the galaxy, species watched in disbelief. Some felt pity for the doomed humans. Others wondered if humanity had some secret weapon they were hiding. Most assumed it was simply the desperate bluff of a species facing extinction. On the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Kethvar watched the human response and laughed. It was a harsh barking sound that made his subordinates flinch. "Consequences beyond our comprehension?" he repeated. "These primitives think they can threaten us. Prepare the fleet. In 30 days we will show these humans what true power looks like." But in the depths of space, far beyond the orbit of Pluto, something was stirring. Ancient defense stations that had been dormant for centuries began to power up. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in hidden bunkers that didn't appear on any map, people who had been waiting for generations received the signal they had trained their entire lives for. Jake stood on the observation deck, looking at Earth one more time. His daughter had called him earlier, asking when he would come home. He had promised her it would be soon, though he wasn't sure if that was true. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake. They thought humanity was weak, because they had only seen what humanity wanted them to see. They thought Earth was defenseless because they didn't understand what humans were willing to do to protect their home. They thought they were hunters about to claim easy prey. They were wrong. So very, very wrong. And in 30 days they would understand exactly what Jake's warning had meant. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for longer than the Zephyrians could imagine. The trap was set. Now all that remained was to wait for the enemy to walk into it. The countdown had begun. Director Sam Walsh walked through the corridors of the facility that officially did not exist. 2 miles beneath the Swiss Alps, Project Prometheus had been operating in absolute secrecy for over 200 years. The tunnel walls were lined with technology that would have seemed like magic to most of humanity. Sam had devoted his entire adult life to this place, and now, finally, all that work was about to be tested. He entered the main operations center, where hundreds of scientists and engineers worked at stations monitoring systems across the solar system. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her console as he approached. She was young for such an important position, barely 35, but she had a gift for understanding the theoretical physics that powered their weapons. "Status report," Sam said. Amy pulled up a holographic display. "All primary systems are online and responding normally. The Oort Cloud fleet reports full readiness. Planetary Defense Network is at 98% capacity. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Sam nodded, but his expression remained troubled. "Tell me again why we kept this secret for so long. Why we let the rest of humanity think we were defenseless." Amy had heard this question before, but she understood why Sam kept asking it. The weight of their secret was enormous, because the technology is too dangerous. If other nations had known about it, there would have been wars. If corporations had known, they would have tried to steal it. And if our enemies had known, they would have come after us before we were ready. The story of Project Prometheus began in 2201. When the first human explorers landed on Mars, they had expected to find a dead world, nothing but rocks and dust. Instead, they found ruins. The structures were buried deep beneath the Martian surface, built by a species that had been dead for millions of years. The builders called themselves the Architects, according to the records they left behind. They had been a peaceful species devoted to art and science. They had also been the victims of the Zephyrian Empire. The ruins contained detailed histories of a war that lasted for centuries, a desperate struggle against an enemy that wanted nothing less than total extinction. The Architects had lost that war, but before they died, they left behind a gift. Hidden in their ruins were quantum computing systems more advanced than anything humanity had ever imagined. There were blueprints for weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe. There were star charts showing hidden resources and ancient shipyards. Most importantly, there were warnings about the Zephyrians and detailed intelligence about their tactics and weaknesses. Colonel Ryan Martinez commanded the hidden fleet stationed in the Oort Cloud, far beyond the reach of conventional sensors. His fleet consisted of 53 warships built using Architect technology. From the outside, they looked like irregular asteroids. Inside, they contained weapons that could reshape reality itself. Ryan floated in zero gravity on the bridge of his flagship, watching status reports from his other ships. Each vessel was positioned along specific coordinates that the architects had calculated millions of years ago. The Zephyrians followed predictable attack patterns. They always had, and the architects had documented those patterns in excruciating detail. "Sir, we're receiving the activation codes from Earth," his communications officer reported. Ryan allowed himself a small smile. "Acknowledged. Begin final preparations. When the Zephyrians arrive, I want them to think we're just debris until it's too late." Back on Earth, General Patricia Lewis oversaw the planetary defense network from a command bunker beneath Colorado. What the public knew as standard shield generators were actually nodes in a quantum entanglement web that connected Earth to every human colony. The system was based on architect technology that humanity still didn't fully understand. Patricia watched as technicians ran diagnostics on systems that had been dormant for decades. Each node was powered by a quantum reactor that drew energy from folded dimensions. If Earth came under attack, the network could do more than just defend. It could weaponize every human settlement in space simultaneously. "General, all nodes are showing green," her chief engineer reported. "The entanglement matrix is stable across all 12 colony systems." "Good," Patricia said. "If this goes wrong, if Earth falls, the network will ensure that humanity survives. Every colony will have the weapons and knowledge they need to continue the fight." Dr. Kevin Brown worked in a different part of the Prometheus facility, surrounded by artifacts recovered from the architect ruins. Kevin was a xenoarchaeologist, but his real job was studying the Zephyrian threat. The architects had left behind extensive intelligence about their enemy, gathered over millennia of warfare. What Kevin had learned terrified him. The Zephyrians weren't just conquering species. They were harvesting them. Every civilization they destroyed was converted into energy that fed something ancient and malevolent. The architects had discovered that the Zephyrian Emperor was not a single being, but a collective consciousness that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years. The architects tried to warn the galaxy. Kevin explained to a group of military planners. They sent messages to every species they could reach. But by the time anyone believed them, it was too late. The Zephyrians destroyed them world by world. "Why leave the weapons and technology here?" one of the planners asked. "Because Mars was their last stand," Kevin replied. They knew they would lose, so they hid everything they could, hoping that someday someone would find it and finish the fight they started. As the 30-day deadline approached, humanity quietly moved its pieces into position. The visible fleet, the one the Zephyrians knew about, maintained its normal patrol patterns. They were bait, meant to lure the enemy into the trap. The real strength of humanity's defense remained hidden. Amy ran simulations constantly, checking and rechecking the calculations. The weapons they would use had been tested, but never against an actual enemy fleet. The margin for error was razor thin. If they mistimed the attack by even a few seconds, the Zephyrians could adapt and counter. "The dimensional cannons are our ace," she explained to Sam. "They fire through folded space-time, bypassing shields and armor completely. The enemy ships will simply cease to exist. But we can only fire them from fixed positions, and they take time to recharge." "How much time?" Sam asked. 45 seconds between shots. "Against 3,000 ships, we'll need every one of those cannons firing in perfect sequence." Sam looked at the tactical display showing the positions of all their hidden assets. "What about the temporal disruptors?" "Those are riskier," Amy admitted. "They age the target forward in time, causing the ship to fall apart from decay. But if we use too much power, we could create temporal anomalies that would affect our own ships." The days counted down. In secret facilities across Earth and throughout the solar system, thousands of people prepared for the battle that would determine humanity's fate. They were scientists who had spent their lives studying alien technology. They were soldiers who had trained for a war that might never come. They were engineers who maintained weapons they had never seen fired, and they were all betting everything on a plan that had been designed by a dead species millions of years ago. President Davis visited the Prometheus facility on day 25. Sam gave her a tour of the weapon systems and explained how the battle would unfold. She listened carefully, asking sharp questions about risks and contingencies. "If this works," she said finally, "we'll have revealed our true capabilities to the entire galaxy. We won't be able to hide anymore." "No, we won't," Sam agreed. "But if we don't use these weapons, Earth falls and humanity dies. The architects gave us the tools we need to survive. Now we have to have the courage to use them." Davis looked at the quantum reactors humming with barely contained power. She thought about the billions of people on Earth who had no idea what was hidden beneath their feet. She thought about her own children, safe in a bunker but still in danger if the plan failed. "Then let's make sure it works," she said. "The architects died fighting the Zephyrians. We're going to finish what they started." War Commander Gorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Doom of Worlds, and watched as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 3,000 warships materialized in perfect formation, a sight that had broken the spirit of countless species before the first shot was even fired. The Zephyrian commander felt satisfaction ripple through his scales. This would be another easy victory. "Scan the system," he ordered. "Locate all defensive positions." His sensor officer worked quickly. "War Commander, we detect approximately 300 human vessels, mostly patrol craft and frigates. Orbital defense platforms around the third planet. No significant military installations detected beyond the inner system." Gorthak bared his teeth in pleasure. The intelligence had been accurate. The humans were primitives, barely capable of interstellar travel. Their warning had been nothing but empty words from a species too foolish to know when they were beaten. "Send forward elements," he commanded. "Destroy the outer defenses. Let the humans watch their protectors die before we glass their planet." The first wave of Zephyrian ships moved toward Earth. Aboard the Earth Defense Station, Jake Morrison watched them come. His hands were steady on the command console, but his heart was pounding. Everything depended on the next few hours. If the plan failed, everyone he loved would die. "All ships begin defensive pattern Echo 7, he ordered. His fleet moved to intercept the enemy, spreading out in a formation that looked desperate and disorganized. It was exactly what the Zephyrians expected to see. Captain Susan Mitchell commanded the battleship Defiance, one of humanity's oldest and most outdated warships. Her orders were simple but dangerous. Make it look good. Make the enemy think they're winning. Draw them in deeper. All batteries fire at will, she commanded. The Defiance's weapons opened up, scoring hits on the lead Zephyrian ships. The enemy shields absorbed the damage easily, barely flickering under the assault. Susan watched her tactical display with growing tension. The Zephyrians were pressing forward aggressively, just as predicted. "Hull breach on Deck 7, her damage control officer reported. "Enemy fire punched through our forward armor." Susan keyed her comm to all ships. "This is Defiance. We need reinforcements. We can't hold them alone." Her voice carried just the right amount of fear and desperation. The Zephyrians were listening, and they needed to believe humanity was on the verge of collapse. Gorthak listened to the human distress calls and felt contempt. "They beg for help that will not come. Press the attack. I want their home world in range within the hour." The Zephyrian fleet surged forward, abandoning their cautious advance for an aggressive push. They had seen this pattern before. The prey species always broke when they realized resistance was futile. The humans were no different. Deep in the Prometheus facility, Lieutenant Commander Danny Wright monitored the tactical situation with intense focus. Danny was Earth's top combat analyst, and for the past 6 months he had done nothing but study Zephyrian attack patterns. Every battle they had ever fought, every tactic they had ever used, was cataloged in his database. "They're following the standard aggression pattern," he reported to Sam Walsh. "Confidence is making them sloppy. They're bunching up, moving faster than their formations can support." "Perfect," Sam nodded. "How long until they reach the firing positions?" 17 minutes, Danny replied. "The lead elements are already in the kill zone." In the Oort cloud, Ryan Martinez watched his tactical display with predatory interest. The Zephyrian fleet was spreading out as they advanced, but their formation had weak points. The architects had identified these vulnerabilities millions of years ago, and the enemy still used the same tactics. "All ships, charge dimensional cannons," Ryan ordered. "Target lock on the command vessels. Fire on my mark." 53 hidden warships began powering up weapons that bent the laws of physics. The architect technology drew energy from dimensions beyond normal space, focusing it into beams that could erase matter from existence. The weapons were invisible to conventional sensors, impossible to defend against, and absolutely devastating. On Earth, Amy Foster watched the quantum field readings with growing tension. The dimensional cannons were generating massive energy spikes. If they fired at the wrong moment, the backlash could tear holes in space-time itself. "All systems nominal," she reported. Firing solutions locked. Weapons ready. Gorthak was reviewing the deployment of his bombardment platforms when his sensor officer cried out in alarm. War Commander. Massive energy spikes detected throughout the system. Unknown signatures. They're everywhere. Before Gorthak could respond, the dimensional cannons fired. Beams of twisted space-time lanced through his fleet. The lead dreadnought simply vanished, erased from reality without even time to send a distress signal. Then more ships disappeared, and more. Evasive maneuvers, Gorthak roared. All ships scatter formation, but it was too late. The humans had positioned their weapons perfectly. Every escape route was covered. Every firing lane was calculated. The Zephyrians tried to flee, but they were moving into a trap that had been designed specifically for them. Ryan watched with grim satisfaction as his fleet tore apart the enemy formation. Target the carriers next. Don't let them launch their fighters. The dimensional cannons fired again. Massive carrier vessels ceased to exist, taking thousands of enemy fighters with them. The Zephyrian fleet was in chaos, ships colliding with each other as they tried to escape the invisible weapons that were destroying them. General Patricia Lewis activated the next phase of the defense. The planetary shield generators, which the Zephyrians thought were just defensive systems, revealed their true purpose. They were actually quantum entanglement projectors, capable of extending Earth's defensive network across millions of miles. Zephyrian ships found themselves caught in fields that disrupted their engines and weapons. Their shields collapsed as the quantum fields interfered with their power systems. They were sitting targets, helpless before weapons they couldn't even detect. Gorthak watched his fleet dying around him. In 30 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Human ships were appearing and disappearing at will. Weapons were firing from impossible ranges. His best warships were being destroyed by technology that shouldn't exist. All ships full retreat, he ordered. Emergency jump to hyperspace now. But even retreat was difficult. The humans had deployed gravity mines that disrupted hyperspace engines. Ships that tried to jump found themselves torn apart by gravitational shears. Those that succeeded in escaping left behind nearly half the fleet. Jake watched the enemy flee with a mixture of relief and horror. They had won, but the cost of victory was sobering. The space around Earth was filled with debris and radiation. Some human ships had been caught in the crossfire, their crews dead before the dimensional cannons could even target the enemy. "Cease fire," he ordered. "Let them go." Susan Mitchell brought the battered Defiance back to dock, her ship scarred but intact. She had lost 37 crew members, and another 100 were injured. But they had survived, and Earth still stood. On the doom of worlds, Gorthak composed an emergency message to the Zephyrian High Command. His hand shook as he recorded his report. The humans had weapons that defied understanding. They had lured the fleet into a perfect ambush. Earth was not a primitive world waiting to be conquered. It was a fortress defended by technology that made the Zephyrian Empire look primitive. "We attacked Earth at our peril," he concluded, "and we paid the price. Any future assault on human space must be reconsidered. We have awakened something that should have remained sleeping." The message was transmitted across the galaxy on all frequencies. Every species heard the warning. The Zephyrian Empire, conquerors of 47 civilizations, had been defeated by humanity. The primitives from Earth had revealed themselves to be anything but primitive. And in the aftermath of the battle, as rescue crews searched for survivors and damage control teams assessed the destruction, President Davis stood before the cameras and addressed not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. "Let this be a lesson to all who would threaten Earth. We are not conquerors. We do not seek war, but we will defend our home with every weapon at our disposal." The Zephyrian Empire learned this truth today. We hope others will learn it without the same cost. Ambassador Helen Torres walked into the chamber of the Hegemony Council, with her head held high. The circular room was massive, designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of different species. Each delegation sat in sections suited to their biology, from water tanks for the aquatic nereids to gravity wells for the dense-bodied chronar. All eyes turned to her as she took her position at the speaker's platform. The Altarian delegate spoke first, his crystalline body chiming with agitation. "Ambassador Torres, the Hegemony demands an explanation. Your species has possessed weapons of unimaginable power, yet you allowed the galaxy to believe you were weak. Why?" Helen met his gaze without flinching. "Because we learned from history. The architects shared their technology freely with other species, believing cooperation would strengthen the galaxy. Instead, their generosity led to wars, theft, and eventually their extinction. We chose a different path. The Corvani ambassador, a being of pure energy contained in a magnetic field, flickered with irritation. Your deception threatens galactic stability. Species may now fear that other seemingly weak civilizations are hiding similar capabilities. You have introduced paranoia where there was once certainty. Better paranoia than complacency, Helen replied. How many species did the Zephyrians destroy while the hegemony watched and did nothing? 47 civilizations exterminated, and the Council merely sent diplomatic protests. We prepared for the day when we would have to stand alone. On Earth, President Davis addressed her own people in a global broadcast. She stood in the rebuilt operations center, where technicians were still repairing damage from the recent battle. Behind her, holographic displays showed images of the architect ruins on Mars and the hidden facilities beneath Earth's surface. For over 200 years we have kept secrets from you, Davis began. We discovered ancient technology on Mars and spent generations learning to use it. We built weapons in hidden facilities and trained soldiers for a war we hoped would never come. We did this not to deceive you, but to protect you. She paused, letting her words sink in. Across Earth, billions of people watched in stunned silence. Some felt betrayed by the secrecy. Others felt relieved that their leaders had been preparing for the worst. All of them understood that their world had changed forever. The Zephyrians will return, Davis continued. Not tomorrow, perhaps not for years. But they will come back, and when they do, we must be ready. That is why I am authorizing the full disclosure of Project Prometheus. No more secrets. Humanity must stand united, fully aware of both the threats we face and the tools we have to meet them. Dr. Kevin Brown stood before the Galactic Science Council, a body of researchers and scholars from across known space. He had brought with him data cubes containing the architect records, information that the dead species had left behind specifically to warn future civilizations. The Zephyrians are not what they appear to be, Kevin explained, projecting holographic images above the council floor. They present themselves as an empire seeking resources and territory. The truth is far worse. They are harvesters of life itself. He showed them images recovered from architect databases, worlds stripped of all biological matter, massive energy collection arrays orbiting dead stars, quantum storage facilities containing the life force of billions of beings. The architect records indicate that the Zephyrian Emperor, Malthusad, is not a single entity, but a collective consciousness. It has existed for millions of years, consuming entire civilizations to sustain itself. Every species the Zephyrians conquer is converted into pure energy and absorbed into this entity. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. A hegemony representative from the insectoid Threx species clicked his mandibles in distress. Surely this is speculation. Where is the proof? Kevin pulled up more data. The architects spent centuries studying the Zephyrians. They infiltrated their systems, examined their technology, and discovered the truth before they were destroyed. Everything is documented here. The Zephyrians don't just kill. They feed. Captain Ben Rogers led a joint expedition into Zephyrian space, his ship accompanied by vessels from 5 other species. The Council had authorized a reconnaissance mission to verify the architect records. Now, as they moved through systems that had been conquered decades ago, they found the evidence. The first world they visited had once been home to the Varani, a peaceful species of herbivores. The planet's surface was barren, stripped of all organic matter. Not a single blade of grass remained. Even the soil had been processed, every trace of life removed with surgical precision. Scanning for any biological signatures, Ben's science officer reported. Nothing. No bacteria, no plant life, no insects. It's completely sterile. They found the energy collection arrays in orbit, massive structures that hummed with power, fed by cables that descended to processing facilities on the surface. Lisa Parker, who had joined the expedition, analyzed the readings with growing horror. These arrays are storing life energy, she said. The quantum signature matches living consciousness, but it's been converted into a form that can be contained and transported. Every living thing on this planet was processed and stored in these arrays. They found 16 more worlds just like it. Billions of beings reduced to energy, waiting to be consumed by something ancient and hungry. The expedition members, even those who had doubted the architect records, could no longer deny the truth. On the 5th week of their mission, they detected something that changed everything. Deep in Zephyrian space near the galactic core, sensors picked up massive energy readings. A fleet was gathering there far larger than the one that had attacked Earth. "I'm counting over 50,000 ships," Ben reported, his voice tight with tension. "And there's something else. A massive structure at the center of the formation. It's giving off readings that don't make sense." Lisa studied the data and her face went pale. "That's not a structure. It's alive. The energy signature is consistent with a biological entity. But the scale is impossible. It's larger than a small moon." They transmitted their findings back to the Hegemony Council. The evidence was undeniable. The Zephyrian Empire was mobilizing for another war, and at its heart was a creature that fed on the life force of entire civilizations. Back at the council chambers, Helen Torres addressed the assembled delegates once more. The architects tried to warn the galaxy about this threat. They fought alone and were destroyed. Humanity could retreat behind our defenses and hope the rest of you can handle the Zephyrians. We could protect only ourselves and let the galaxy burn. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. But that's not who we are. The architects left us their technology and their knowledge. They left us a responsibility. We won't hide while others face extinction. The Hegemony Council debated for hours. Some species wanted to negotiate with the Zephyrians, hoping to appease them. Others argued for immediate military action. A few suggested that everyone should follow Earth's example and hide behind defensive systems. Helen listened to all of them, then stood once more. "The Zephyrians are coming. Not just for Earth, but for all of us. They need to harvest life to feed their emperor, and they won't stop until every world is dead. We can face them divided and die one by one, or we can stand together and fight." The Altarian delegate, who had been hostile at the start, now spoke with a different tone. "What do you propose, Ambassador Torres?" "A coalition," Helen replied. "Every species that values life and freedom. We share our technology, coordinate our defenses, and prepare for the war that's coming. The architects couldn't save themselves, but maybe together, we can finish what they started." The vote took days, but eventually the council agreed. The Galactic Defense Coalition was formed, with Earth as one of its founding members. Ships from dozens of worlds began gathering at staging points. Scientists shared research. Military planners coordinated strategies. President Davis stood in the Prometheus facility, watching as human technicians helped alien engineers understand architect technology. It was a strange sight, species that had been strangers weeks ago now working side by side. "We've opened a door we can't close," Sam Walsh said quietly beside her. "I know," Davis replied, "but it was the right choice. The architects died alone. We won't." Above Earth, the combined fleet of the coalition assembled. Human ships flew alongside alien vessels, a force united by the simple desire to survive. They trained together, learned each other's tactics, and prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. And in the depths of space, near the galactic core, the Zephyrian fleet grew larger. Emperor Malthusad stirred from his ancient slumber, hungry for the life force of new worlds. Earth had defied him, had hurt him, and now he would make an example of humanity that would terrify the galaxy for generations to come. 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the galaxy prepared for its final battle. The Zephyrian core fleet had emerged from the depths of galactic space, a massive armada that eclipsed even the force that had attacked humanity. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the coalition flagship, looking at the tactical display with grim determination. The battle would take place at Kepler 442, a system whose destruction would cut faster than light travel between the galaxy's spiral arms. The Zephyrians had chosen the location deliberately. If they won here, they could split the coalition forces and conquer each arm of the galaxy separately. Final count puts their fleet at 52,000 ships, reported Commander Lisa Reynolds, who had taken over tactical analysis from Danny Wright after he was injured in a skirmish 3 weeks ago. "We have 15,000 coalition vessels. The odds are not good," Jake nodded. They all knew the numbers. Every species in the coalition had contributed what they could, but the Zephyrian Empire had been building its forces for millions of years. The enemy had reserves that seemed endless. Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically in a lab aboard the flagship. She had made a breakthrough in understanding architect technology, something that could change everything. The Genesis device, as she called it, could rewrite the fundamental forces within a star system. But using it required precise coordination between hundreds of ships, and the slightest error could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. If we activate the device at the wrong moment, we could create a black hole that swallows both fleets, she explained to Sam Walsh. But if we time it perfectly, we can neutralize the Zephyrian weapon systems and level the battlefield. How much time do you need? Sam asked. 4 minutes of uninterrupted operation. 4 minutes where the device ships are completely vulnerable and must maintain exact positions. If even one ship moves, the whole system collapses. Sam looked at the tactical projections. 4 minutes was an eternity in space combat. The ships running the Genesis device would be torn apart by enemy fire long before they could complete the activation sequence. Colonel Ryan Martinez volunteered his squadron for the most dangerous mission. His stealth ships would conduct a reconnaissance deep into Zephyrian space to gather final intelligence on the enemy flagship. What they discovered was worse than anyone had imagined. Emperor Malthuzad's flagship was revealed to be a weaponized black hole, contained within quantum fields and powered by the life force of extinct civilizations. The entity itself existed within the singularity, a consciousness so vast and ancient that it defied comprehension. Every ship in the Zephyrian fleet was connected to it, drawing power from the Emperor's stolen life energy. It's not just commanding the fleet, Ryan reported. It is the fleet. Every Zephyrian ship is an extension of Malthuzad's consciousness. Destroy the Emperor and the entire fleet collapses. But destroying a weaponized black hole was theoretically impossible. Conventional weapons would be absorbed by the event horizon. Even the dimensional cannons couldn't target something that existed outside normal spacetime. President Davis received Ryan's report while touring the coalition defense positions. She had come to Kepler 442 against the advice of her security team, insisting that if this was humanity's last stand, she would face it alongside her people. There has to be a way, she said to Kevin Brown, who had accompanied her. The architects fought the Zephyrians for centuries. They must have found some weakness. Kevin had been studying the architect records day and night, searching for anything they might have missed. The architects never defeated Malthuzad, but they did learn something important. The Emperor is sustained by stolen life force. It's not truly immortal. It's just very good at stealing the energy it needs to survive. A desperate plan began to form. If they couldn't destroy the Emperor directly, perhaps they could starve it. The Genesis device could do more than just neutralize weapons. In the right configuration, it could reverse the energy flow, forcing Malthuzad to expend its stored life force faster than it could consume new energy. We'd be turning the Emperor's hunger against itself, Amy explained, but it would take more than 4 minutes. We'd need at least 10 minutes of sustained operation, and the device ships would need to be positioned right next to the enemy flagship. Then we make sure they get there, Jake said. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room understood what he was proposing. It would be a suicide mission. The ships carrying the Genesis device would never make it back. The battle began with conventional tactics. The coalition fleet engaged the Zephyrian armada at maximum range, using every weapon and strategy they had developed over months of preparation. Human dimensional cannons fired alongside Altarian plasma lances and Corvani energy disruptors. For a brief moment it seemed like they might have a chance. Then Emperor Malthuzad entered the battlefield and everything changed. The weaponized black hole at the center of the Zephyrian formation generated gravitational waves that tore through the coalition lines. Ships were crushed by impossible tidal forces. Weapons simply disappeared into the event horizon. The Emperor's presence distorted space itself, making targeting solutions impossible. All forces fall back to defensive position Gamma, Jake ordered. Execute Operation Genesis. Captain Susan Mitchell commanded the squadron of 12 ships chosen to carry the Genesis device. Her vessel, still bearing the scars from the first battle with the Zephyrians, led the formation through the chaos of combat. Behind her, 11 other ships maintained perfect synchronization, their quantum cores linked in a delicate network. Enemy fighters incoming, her tactical officer reported. 200 contacts and closing fast. Stay on course, Susan ordered. All power to forward shields. We just need to get close enough. Ryan's stealth squadron appeared from nowhere, dimensional drives allowing them to materialize directly in the path of the enemy fighters. The sacrifice was immediate and absolute. Ryan's ships destroyed dozens of enemy vessels but were overwhelmed in seconds. His final transmission was simple. Clear path for Genesis Squadron. Make it count. The Genesis device ships pushed through the opening Ryan had created. They were taking heavy fire now, their shields failing one by one. A Corvani vessel exploded as enemy fire breached its reactor. 2 human ships collided when spatial distortions threw off their navigation. But the remaining ships pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their only chance. General Patricia Lewis activated Earth's quantum entanglement network from her command bunker. The system connected every human colony across 12 star systems, and now she used it to channel energy directly to the Genesis device. Other species followed suit, linking their homeworlds to the network. Billions of beings across the galaxy focused their combined will on this single moment. Susan's ship shuddered as enemy fire tore through her hull. She had lost weapons, engines, and half her crew. But she was close enough now. The weaponized black hole filled her view screen, a massive darkness that seemed to swallow hope itself. Activating Genesis device, she reported. All ships begin the sequence. The remaining Genesis ships formed a circle around Emperor Malthuzad's flagship. Their quantum cores synchronized, creating a field that inverted the natural flow of energy. Instead of consuming life force, the Emperor was forced to expend it. The stolen energy of billions of extinct beings began to drain away, flowing back into the universe. Malthuzad screamed, a sound that existed beyond normal hearing. It was the death cry of countless civilizations, the agony of beings that had been trapped in quantum storage for millions of years. The Emperor thrashed, its flagship distorting space as it tried to break free from the Genesis field. Field is holding, Amy reported from the flagship. But we're losing ships. The strain is too much. One by one, the Genesis device vessels failed. Their quantum cores burned out under the impossible load. Susan watched her crew die around her as systems exploded and bulkheads collapsed. But she kept her ship in position, even as life support failed and the bridge filled with toxic fumes. Just a little longer, she whispered. Hold together just a little longer. The trapped life force within Emperor Malthuzad began to rebel. The consciousness of extinct species held captive for eons found a path to freedom. They poured out of the Emperor in a wave of pure energy, and instead of dissipating into the void, they turned on their captor. The architects were among them, their collective consciousness preserved in quantum storage for millions of years. They had waited for this moment, planned for it, and now they struck with all the fury of a species denied their natural death. Emperor Malthuzad collapsed inward, the weaponized black hole consuming itself in a cascade of quantum decay. The Zephyrian fleet connected to the Emperor's consciousness simply stopped. 50,000 warships went dark simultaneously, their crews discovering that without Malthuzad's will driving them, they had no purpose. Susan died watching her view screen fade to black, a smile on her face. The Genesis device had worked. Earth was safe. The galaxy was saved. In the aftermath, the Coalition fleet floated among the debris of both sides. They had won, but the cost was terrible. 10,000 Coalition ships destroyed, millions of crew members dead. Entire species had contributed their last vessels,